Hai cosita linda. A mí la noche a la casa alta. Estoy muy cansado.
What language is that, Prime Minister? Language is it? Spanish?
Madam Speaker, I'm just practicing my Spanish in case I have to respond to the responder. Madam Speaker, thank you very much for acknowledging me and permitting me to enter this debate on the 5th day in 2024. I want, Madam Speaker, to begin by thanking the leader of the government's effort through the Ministry of Finance for the job that he and his team would have done for the people of Trinidad and Tobago over the last 9 years. Because, Madam Speaker, it is not easy to be responsible for grappling with the challenges of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and to have done so successfully is worthy of commendation. But, Madam Speaker, before I go into the substance of the debate, I want to just crave your indulgence, coming so late in the debate and representing the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and as a parliamentarian of long standing in this House, to reflect on how we have changed and not for the better. Madam Speaker, as I listen to the commentary coming from some quarters in the country, especially from some of my parliamentary colleagues, especially the leadership, I find it worrisome that we have become so hateful and that dishonesty, untruth, and hate have become the currency of some people's operation. To the point where, Madam Speaker, to use the word colleague is difficult with some of these people. And for me, it's hard because I can reflect on when it was a different time, but with the same responsibilities. The responsibility of offering oneself to serve in the country, accepting that responsibility when it's given to you, and proceeding to say, yes, we are on different sides of the political divide, but we are in fact citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and our effort is singular in purpose. We should want the best for the country at all times. Madam Speaker, I don't see that. What I see is an attempt to get the population to respond to alternative truths. These are not original phrases of mine, but I see such great similarity between Trinidad and Tobago, especially its opposition, and the calamity that's happening in a large country up north, that I wonder who exactly is their leader. Who is leading the opposition into this situation? So we come here after 9 years of being the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Unfortunately, the same Minister of Finance is in a position to expertly speak to all aspects of our finance. And the government takes the position that the country can benefit and must benefit from a comprehensive reporting of what we are facing, what we have been doing, where we're at, and where we're going. And to do that, Madam Speaker, it takes time. But apparently, to have reported so comprehensively to the country is to offend some people. And in fact, some of our opposition members, both in and outside of the House, the biggest issue for them was the length of the speech, how long the speech was. That was the premier criticism. Not that the government had reported comprehensively, but that the speech was too long. And Madam Speaker, that wouldn't get them very far. So the next thing is to question everything that the government has put forward. So the opposition leader, my colleague from Siparia, spoke for 3.5 hours. And at the end of it, she fired a dud. It's called a blank. Didn't realize that it had no impact on the population. So she had a press conference to double down on what she had said in this House and to accuse the Minister of Finance of speaking untruths about the public debt, about the numbers of everything, and hoping to tell the country, don't believe anything the government says. The Minister of Finance has in fact spoken untruths throughout the entire budget debate. That is the response of the opposition to a budget which is really an estimate of how we will distribute what we intend to have as revenue in the next 12 months. Madam Speaker, I want to say to the population of Trinidad and Tobago, if all that your problems are wrapped up in what the opposition has said, then as a country we're in a good place. And if the best they could say about the government is what they've said here for the last 5 years, then the government has done a wonderful job. Because we have been managing a very difficult period in the country's history. And you come here to respond to a budget, and all you could do is to say the numbers lie. Madam Speaker, across the world in all economics classes and at institutions around the world, whether it's the IDB, the IMF, whatever else, Madam Speaker, I did not disturb them.
Please, Prime Minister, on a point of order, there's a particular word that I would need you to withdraw. Okay, that you've used as a word that we've consistently ruled that is unparliamentary in this House.
They like the word untruth because they think it's different. What is different between untruth?
Prime Minister, Prime Minister, and Prime Minister, we've ruled consistently that that's not a word that is parliamentary. So if you withdraw the word, you know what word to use, and let's proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw the word lie.
Just withdraw the word. Don't repeat it, just withdraw it and proceed.
I withdraw the word, Madam Speaker, but I will continue. Madam Speaker, and I will not be guided by them. Madam Speaker, there are certain performance criteria that are used to measure situations in countries. And on this occasion, Madam Speaker, I want to just very quickly mention, with respect to GDP growth, the Minister of Finance talked about 1.9%. Madam Speaker, what we can do then is to compare ourselves with others, because we don't live alone in this world. How are others doing with their circumstances and their challenges? Jamaica, 1.8%. Barbados, 3.7%. Guyana, booming at 33%. Antigua, minus 2.8%. Countries like us, Bahrain, Oman, Emirates, hydrocarbon economies, 1.2%, 2%, and so on. So that indicator tells us that we're doing something good. Inflation, 0.4%. And look at 18 countries. Barbados, 2.7%. Antigua, 2.2%. Suriname, 14%. Bahrain, 1.4%. Qatar, 2.6%. Japan, 2%. 18 countries. We are the lowest of the 18 at 0.4%. I looked at unemployment, 5.4%, up from 4%. Barbados, 8.2%. Bahamas, 8%. Of the same group of 18 countries, most of them are approximating about 8%. We are at 5.4%. So while we have an unemployment problem, we measure pretty decently with the rest of other persons with their circumstances. The Bahamas, 8.8%. Suriname, 10%. If I do another comparator, per capita income, Madam Speaker, in 2016, our per capita income was $17 billion, just over 17 billion. 17.2, it went to 17.3 in 2017, 17.6 in 2018. Madam Speaker, come 2020, COVID, it dropped to 14 billion, 14.8 billion. But we know why. We worked at it. We stood our ground. So by 2021, it was back to 17.4. 2023, 19.8. So, Madam Speaker, that is good realism, good performance, good situation, because suppose we had not been able to bounce back from the 14 billion economy. We go to Human Development Index, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding all that you have heard, they call it doom and gloom, because that is the yardstick. All that you have heard about how Trinidad and Tobago is a hellhole. But look at the International Human Development Index used by the authorities around the world to determine the quality of life in any country. And this is not our measurement, this is the measurement of independent persons looking around the world using the same yardsticks. Trinidad and Tobago ranks number 60 on this scale of the countries around the world. And we are ranked Human Development Index 0.814. And that on the system is very high human development, which means life expectancy, access to education, healthcare and income distribution and so on. All of these things get put together to determine what goes on in a country and the quality of life in that country. We are ranked in the category of countries very high human development. You know who is there with us? Barbados, ranked number 62. The Bahamas is ranked number 57. Belize is ranked at number 118, and Jamaica is ranked number 115. Argentina is ranked number 48 with a 200% inflation rate. But they're measuring in this one quality of life. So no one index indicates comprehensively the quality of life in that country. You look at Bahamas, you'll see Bahamas per capita income is higher than ours, right? And it says that they are ranked a little above better quality of life. But if you go to inflation and you go to unemployment, you'll see Bahamas have 8% unemployment. So, Madam Speaker, when we speak to the country here, we want the country to understand that we are not alone on this planet. Judge us by how well we are doing as compared to our. So, having said that, Madam Speaker, I know I don't have a lot of time, but I want to just touch on a couple of things. There was one point that was made by the Member of Parliament for, is it Kuva? Chaguanas West. The member for Chaguanas West raised an issue about doing something to bring our children home from the conflict zones. And he spoke very emphatically about that. Madam, it's not that we're not doing anything, but it's a very difficult assignment, and I want to give the member the assurance that what is in place, we continue to try to make an effort to bring those children back here. And if we can get that done, I think that issue would be a going behind us. And, you know, what we have to do and what we are working on is to create a mechanism for the government to control return and entry of Trinidad and Tobago nationals from conflict zones abroad. So that would require a special majority in that legislation. And today I am instructing the Attorney General to speak to all members on the other side, especially those who have indicated, and as the draft is ready, to make the draft available to them, and we will see who will come to this House and support it so we can advance that. I heard the member for Mayaru. Say that he will support legislation that he thinks is in the public interest. We have a control operations bill to come to enable law enforcement to conduct undercover operations and gather evidence while maintaining public safety and ensuring successful prosecution. As soon as that draft is available, I will ask the member, the Attorney General, to make it available to them on the other side, and then we come back to the House and we'll see who will vote for it and who will not vote for it. We have a firearms amendment bill to come to ban assault weapons and high-powered rifles from this country's streets. And I want to see who is going to support that. We are looking at it in CARICOM. As soon as the draft, we are talking about a template from the CARICOM. Madam Speaker.
Member, please let's hear the Prime Minister in silence. Prime Minister.
They had all that they had to say. I didn't interrupt one of them. I listened in horror at most of them. So I'll speak in silence. Madam Speaker, there's a requirement to bring legislation to ban assault weapons in Trinidad and Tobago, and we will ask our colleagues on the other side to support that legislation so assault weapons will have no place in Trinidad and Tobago, purchased anywhere or illegally entering this country. So that's that. Madam Speaker, I want to express my sincerest condolences too to the family of that young schoolboy. His name is Jaden, who took his own life because of how he was being persecuted in the school. Madam Speaker, nobody should have, no parent should have to bury a child, but to have to bury one under those circumstances is particularly punishing. And then while I was trying to digest that, another piece of news came up where a citizen has killed a wife and a baby, 18-month-old baby, and I'm told that he was on the way to the school to try to kill the other child. For God's sake, suppose he had got to that school and had killed that second child in and among the other school children. Madam Speaker, what is going on in our society? And we have no control over the thought of criminal conduct. We can only respond to them after they've done it. But then the press will ask people in the street, what do you think? And the headline is, quoting the man talking to his mother, I killed Gita and the child. And I asked somebody in the street, what do you think about that? So Trinidad is a very messed up country. The Prime Minister needs to step down. Only so things will change. That is the view of some people in this country. Madam Speaker, what does that horrendous act have to do with the assignment of a Prime Minister? Some people think that they're related. And I too, I saw in today's papers, DCP Meister saying, ACP Meister saying to the country that, to the women in particular, that in the issues of domestic violence, you need to be careful what you do through life, in life, and don't put yourself in a situation. Because, Madam Speaker, misinformation is causing people to be blaming the police for that horrendous situation. But when you look at it, as far as I could have seen, the law was followed and the police would have followed the law. But the citizens' responsibility fell short. Madam Speaker, I'm saying this, Madam Speaker, because I remember many years ago, I was at a public meeting public conversation, and a matter was raised about somebody's problem, domestic problem, in a home, and a woman called on me to do something about it. And I made the observation then that the government's authority stops at the front door in some instances and doesn't get into the bedroom. But as we grapple with these issues, we need to take some personal responsibility about how we behave. Mama, they nearly skewer me for giving the advice that I give to my 2 daughters. Be careful with how you go about your life and with whom you associate. Today I see Officer Meister saying the same thing in similar situations. Madam Speaker, I saw my colleague from Pointe-à-Pitre. He wants details of the Atlantic LNG restructuring. Madam Speaker, how much more details can we give in this situation? We've given all the reasons why we've done it. We've given all the reasons why if we don't do it, what is going to be the outcome. We indicated at every step of the way what progress we have made and how we have made it. And we indicate what prospect we can hold out to the country. What does he want? What details does he want? And that's all that is done against the background of the market fluctuations and vagaries, and the gas production in our country, and our reducing volumes, and our need to go and look for gas elsewhere and so on. But he had no interest in wanting to know or being concerned that the leader that he follows as Prime Minister of this country had no idea what the government shareholding in Atlantic LNG was. Didn't even know that we didn't have any shareholding in Insurance 2 and Insurance 3. So I'm saying that some of these people who are appointing themselves spokespersons for the national interest, they're either hopelessly lost, unresearched, or just malicious. Because my colleague from Siparia, from Pointe-à-Pitre, every time he gets up, is to look for some way to poke some negative at Jagandil, at Manatee, at LNG, and does not know what he's talking about. What details are you working for? As though we're hiding something, and there's something that the public should know, and you will make them know it. We are talking to the public at every step of the way, including, Madam Speaker, having to listen to the opposition leader coming here and talking about Minister Young and Prime Minister Rowley went and talked in Houston.
We're trying to comply, so yes, sure.
Language, I'm trying to use the English language, but apparently it's circumscribed in this particular way. I have to try and comply. But as I'm thinking and talking, it slips. The member for Siparia coming here and talking about decisions that we made on gas price in Houston caused the price of electricity to go up in this country. Madam Speaker, I want to say it again for the nth time to my colleagues on the other side. And I hope now the 5 down there will believe me this time because they're down there now. We did not, Mr. Young, Minister, the member for Port of Spain Northeast, and myself, Diego Martin West. I can't talk to myself now. We did not go to Houston to negotiate any gas price. We went to Houston urgently because the contact and the negotiations between BP and NGC had broken down, and there was no conversation taking place about a gas price that was sorely needed in a situation where the entire Point Lisas estate was at risk. As Prime Minister, I took the responsibility with the Minister and the Office of Prime Minister to go to Houston to meet the decision makers, to pull them together and to get them talking to NGC again. That's what we did. Why is that so difficult for you all to understand? It's either you're dumb or you're wicked. Coming here and talking about raising of electricity rate. Madam Speaker, that decision to bring them back immediately to talk, resulted in a gas price being arrived at, and immediately freed up.
48 I would like the Prime Minister to withdraw the word dumb.
Continue, Prime Minister.
Point proven. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. That is so, Madam Speaker, that was the nature of a lot of the response to the budget. The budget drew some highlights.
With the person with the offending device leave the chamber, get their device under control, and they could return. Whoever it is, kindly leave the chamber.
Madam Speaker, I trust that I'll get some injury time for these unnecessary disturbances, right? So there are a few things that came up that I want to respond to, just to make sure that the record is straight. There are about 4 or 5 issues that I am required to respond to in my portfolio, but I'll come back to that in a minute. But I want, for the record, to deal with this statement made by my colleague from St. Augustine, because it's fundamental to the politics and the belief to the next election. And that is that the UNC repealed the property tax. Madam Speaker, what do I have to do to get them to stop saying that?
Impossible.
The challenge to the property tax was there, went to the court, and it was not proceeded with. And then, Madam Speaker, the government came to this parliament, where some of them were present, and enacted a waiver. And the waiver was for a specific period of time. That waiver ended by intervention and English letters in this parliament. The waiver ended, and thus the existing property tax law became force. That happened in 2014 to effect in 2015. So when we came in September 2015, the following couple of weeks, 1st of October 2015, the waiver would have died. The waiver would have expired. So the Property Tax Act became in full force. I want to repeat that. As a result of a position taken here by Minister Larry Hawaii of the UNC in this place, the waiver that was being enjoyed, put there by them for political reasons, axed the tax. The axe became dull, and there was no axe after September of 2015. I became the leader of this team at Prime Minister on the 9th of September 2015. And from the 1st of October, the first of the new fiscal year, the Property Tax Act came back into force as enacted by the PNM. It was never repealed. And I don't want to use the word again because I don't want to annoy my colleague from Cuba, but it applies to St. Augustine. Madam Speaker, all of that is meant to fool the public, because some people in this country trust them to speak the truth, but they're selling the pig in a bad market. They have a difficulty with speaking the truth. What they did, they went to court and argued against the tax that I was paying since I was 17 years old. And in the court, one little strand of the argument was supported in the court and resulted in the court asking the government to create a new role. We had to go and find 200 houses individually assessed, half of the population of houses in the country, before before we could put the law into force. And it took the government probably, 36 or 48 months to do that. So that's what we're doing all the time. We did not grant a waiver, but we were complying with the court order to create a new role. And as you created the role, they created manima up and down about the whole question of the valuation and the property tax. And Madam Speaker, let me just end on this note on this point. At the end of the day, this government is levying and receiving property tax. Is it 2%? 2%. You know what? When they removed the waiver, you know what they were asking to do when they tried to do it? Was 7%. They had set out to collect the tax at 7%. It is now 2%, but they're still out there harassing the public. Property tax, property tax, property tax. Mischievous underminers that you are. Madam Speaker, the next big point that came out of the budget debate, making headline, is that the Prime Minister somehow sequestered $400 million for himself in his ministry, and they used ghost buildings to do it. The opposition leader is a self-appointed senior counsel. Gone to a press conference after she had 3.5 hours to talk to the country about the budget. Gone to a press conference to make that ridiculous statement, but I waste no more of my time on that. I expect the Minister of Finance will deal with that. Gone further, the Prime Minister has put $50 million in the budget for fetting at the Prime Minister's residence. Let me just point out something to the country and use my time to do that, though. Upon having the responsibility for forming a cabinet in this country, one of the things I did was to operate a smaller cabinet than the previous Prime Minister. This cabinet has 23 members. Madam Speaker, our expenditure has always been frugal at the Prime Minister's residence at Diplomatic Center, where it's a complex, a compound. As Minister for UDCOT, the Prime Minister has that portfolio, the Urban Development Corporation. The line minister for the Urban Development Corporation, UDCOT, is the Prime Minister. And I took responsibility for using that corporation for doing a number of things, not the least of which was to bring us back into this parliament. We were all over the country like Ms. Howard Cat, and the parliament was left as a construction site for years. I took responsibility for that. UDCOT under my portfolio. Our legacy buildings that were rotting on Queen's Park West, that today they are sources of pride to us. The President House, that was a garbage dump, collecting garbage by the truckload. Today the President House is in use. And of course, the Prime Minister's residence is not a home for battered women. It is a home to house the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, they try to make those issues because they figure you would not know the facts. What are the facts? Who was spending money while at the Prime Minister's residence? Who was fetting there? 2010 to 2015, when the UNC was in government, when my friend from Siparia was in charge of government affairs, Prime Minister's establishment operating expenses at the Diplomatic Center and residence of the Prime Minister, $122.6 million. And add to that, $47.8 million for events. That comes to $170,482,000. So while they spent $170 million operating all the responsibilities of that institution up there, residence and the center, 2015 to 2020, Prime Minister's establishment operating expenses, $42,716,000. And as for events, for that period, $9,435,000. So while they spent $122 million, we spent $42. While they spent 47, we spent 9. So the total was, while they spent 170.48 million, we spent 52.15 million. And I have to come here and listen to the leader of the opposition trying to mislead the country that some kind of splurging is taking place at the Prime Minister's residence. Madam Speaker, so far for the period 2020 to 2024, 37.9 million for operating expenses and 12 million for events, for a total of 50 million, as compared to 170 million. I defy any one of them or any authority anywhere to have a different, truthful expression. Madam Speaker, listen to this. Unusual expenditure, which we never incurred while we were there for over 9 years. We've never had an event planner to plan anything in that place. Every event we've had there was planned by the staff. And today I want to pay particular acknowledgement to the good work being done by Ms. Wendy Rock of Utica. Every single event, from hosting heads of state to whatever, in that place, the event planner there was Wendy Rock as part of a day work. But here, under them, event planner fees, 173,700 for one event.
Wow.
But the event was a cabinet retreat. A cabinet retreat at the residence there cost 173,700. They paid a planner. I wouldn't tell you who the planner is because then you will see the whole story. I don't want to see the whole story. And then overall entertainment planning fees. So you have a planner, you paid 173,000. But you have planning fees of 345,000. Madam Speaker, it was so interesting that one of them, there's one situation where the event planner cost the event planner cost the event planner fee is 96,000 in that another event, and this was the Venezuelan president's visit. They hired an event planner. The planner to plan the events for the show for the president of Venezuela. The planner is 96,000, but the show is 35,000. The planner costs twice as much as the show.
Oh my goodness.
That is how they spend money. That is how they spend money. And I don't have the time now to go into the OS and the 961 million. I don't have time to go into all of those things because those are other stories that are all around us. But then come in the budget debate to get a headline that the Prime Minister is taking millions to go and fit. The Minister of Finance will explain all that for you. Travel, Madam Speaker. Travel. The Prime Minister they want to know, the Prime Minister is traveling. There's one from Orapuch East. He is calling for my passport to be taken away because I'm traveling too much. Madam Speaker, I have not made a trip in this country that I can't defend publicly. I remember my colleague from La Parima chastising me in here for not going to COP meeting. And the UN General Assembly because he was familiar with the UNGA, right? As Prime Minister, I deliberately did not go to the number of things that I should have gone on, but I did not miss the one that I had to be at. You see? So every year, there are at least 2 CARICOM meetings. Since I became Prime Minister, I've been to my 10th year now. I've been to virtually, I think, every single CARICOM country because the meeting rotates from country to country. And we meet twice a year. I've been to Suriname, Guyana, Grenada, St. Lucia, Barbados, Antigua, Belize, all the way. Because that's where CARICOM have its meeting. I want to ask my colleagues on the other side, which CARICOM meeting I should not go to? Which one? Because they have CARICOM meetings they don't go to, you know. When my colleague from Siparia was Prime Minister, there was a CARICOM meeting in Guyana where the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago was absent. And in the absence of Trinidad and Tobago, an item called the Single Market and Economy, CARICOM Single Market and Economy, CSME, was taken off of the agenda in the absence of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who was busy in Tobago at Cocoa Reef, drinking and celebrating the UNC victory in May of 2016. So while the country's business, the single market and economy, where all our manufacturers put their business to sell their produce, to keep workers employed, and to earn foreign exchange, that was taken off the agenda. I had to put it back there, my first meeting in CARICOM, put it back on the agenda. And as a result of that, the initiative brought us here to a special CARICOM meeting at the Hilton, where CARICOM for the first time then agreed to something called the St. Anne's Accord. That is where we cement our position and secure our market. We pay into the CARICOM Support Development Fund for the LDCs, and they agree to buy our product in a more open and effective way. We protected our market, we protected our manufacturers, we protected our jobs by the Prime Minister standing there in reach. That's what Prime Ministers do. That's what the Prime Minister is supposed to do. And of course, questioning my travel. I had to go to Jamaica to sit down. I took with me the member for St. Augustine at the time, Prakash Amada, as part of the opposition. Sat there with the government of Jamaica, a whole half of the cabinet, trying to prevent them from supporting a boycott of Trinidad and Tobago's goods because of the offensive language used by Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister. I had to go to the Chamber of Commerce in Jamaica and speak like I haven't spoken before to people, asking them to respect and to support CARICOM and not ban our goods. And coming here talk about travel. Madam Speaker, there are two travel items in front of me as I speak to you now. One is the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa. I want to ask my colleagues on the other side, and I'll sit down in case you all want to answer. Just indicate. Should I or should I not go to that meeting of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa on the 22nd of this month? If you think I should not go, just indicate. I'll give you time to answer. But once you agree that I should go, there are certain arrangements in place to cover the costs. So,
advise you have 2 more minutes of ordinary time. You're entitled to 10 more minutes after that to wrap up your presentation.
Okay. So, having agreed that I should go, there are certain arrangements in cost, airfare, and so on, and the airfares are not cheap anywhere in the world. So, what is this thing about coming to make an issue of Prime Minister traveling when you know that these are the quid pro quos and requirements for being a nation in the Commonwealth or even in the world? Madam Speaker, let me just, over and above the normal 2 CARICOM meetings a year. So after 9.5 years, that's over 20 meetings of the standard CARICOM meetings. So things come up. I also attended a meeting in Washington, which wasn't on the agenda from early. And that was the Caribbean Central American Energy Summit in Washington, organized by the United States government. I had the opportunity then to sit at that meeting with now President Biden. That's where I knew him personally. Madam Speaker, I also had to go to Ghana. You know why I had to go to Ghana, Madam Speaker? Because the Ghanaian president sent an emissary to Trinidad and Tobago to invite us into the Ghanaian energy industry that they were just discovering, wanting to give us the business of gas processing. The emissary came to Trinidad and for 3 days could not see the Prime Minister. Eventually, the then Prime Minister agreed to see him in a constituency office. When he got there to see her in the office, she was not very lucid. So he had to go back and report to the president his experience in Trinidad and Tobago. Ghana then called in the Chinese and gave them the business. But they still wanted to talk to us in Trinidad and Tobago, so I had to go there now and recreate that contact in Ghana. And Madam Speaker, subsequent to that, on 2 occasions, I was invited as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, once to be the special guest of the people of Ghana at their independence celebration. I accepted that invitation. Who over there wants to say I should never have accepted it? And then the Ashanteini, the king of the Ashanti, invited me to be his personal guest at his 25th anniversary, celebrating his ascension to the throne in Ghana. I shouldn't have gone to that. And of course, what I have in my hand right now, dated, this one is dated the 8th of October, which is just recently. Written to me by the Prime Minister of Barbados. The International Monetary Fund, in partnership with the government of Barbados, is pleased to invite you in the in-person 2024 High-Level Caribbean Forum on Tuesday, December 3, 2024 in Bridgetown, Barbados. And this is now sponsored by Barbados and the International Monetary Fund for discussions on matters which are obviously pertinent to Trinidad and Tobago. The forum will involve and facilitate a dialogue on addressing the challenges relating to transition into the green energy. I'm talking about taking stock of macroeconomic implications and unleashing private sector investment and so on and so on. Should I go or should I not go? I'm asking for your permission. Coming and wasting people's time talking about Prime Minister's travel. Madam Speaker, I can account for every hour. And I want to put on the record, I have never met an oil company executive when I was not appropriately dressed, never in my pajamas. Madam Speaker, another big point that was made was the whole question of government rent. Let me just put on record in this parliament. This is my 44th year in public life. I started that, yes, Tabakit. I was there before you. Before you were born. I started my political career on a public platform for the PNM in Belgarden in Tobago. You know what the big issue at that time? Getting rid of the Ministry of Tobago Affairs. Because the Ministry of Tobago Affairs was deemed to be oppressive to the people of Tobago in their quest for internal self-government and so on and so on. They wanted nothing to do with the Ministry of Tobago Affairs. The PNM lost that election in 1980. I cut my teeth in that election. And there was not a Ministry for Tobago Affairs anywhere in Tobago until the UNC came into view. When the UNC came into view, they saw not Tobago internal self-government as the issue. They saw opportunity. And the opportunity they saw was to facilitate the construction of an office building in Tobago. That office building today houses the Prime Minister and CAST, Central Administrative Services. They came out of the building, the Treasury, the government's own building, which has been there empty ever since. Empty and locked up there. Because they built a building with their connections, and that building was offered to the government. It had a number of defects at the time when it was offered. They then said the defects were attended to, and the valuation division valued the rent at $280,000 a month. That was the government's valuation division's valuation. They said, nah, that's too low. They rented for $300,000 a month. Wow. And between then and now, that building has been rented for upwards of $46 million. Every month, $300,000. is the only business in Tobago who's so lucky to get that done. Tobago business. Renting that. And while they're renting it happily and silent, the government building, the government structure, lock up there, them and their friends in Tobago, right? And telling me now about who wants self-government and who don't want it and whatnot. I want to say to my colleagues who have now seen the light, because I've heard them speak in this parliament like they've never spoken before. They have come out from under the yoke. They have come out from under the yoke of the member for Siparia, and now they are free to be decent, patriotic citizens. Yeah. You said you will support good legislation. We have a piece of legislation before the Parliament for Tobago internal self-government coming from committee in this House. I ask you to read it, because as soon as the budget debate is over, I'm going to bring it back to the floor, and if you really believe in being patriotic, you will support what that bill supports for the people of Tobago. And as for my friend from Couva North, who waiting to jump into this debate, I just want to advise you that when we are completed at airport in Tobago, that terminal building, it will be a very difficult place for you to operate. Madam Speaker, the last minute that I have, I simply want to say that the government observed, one, that the vessel, the boat from China that the former Prime Minister saw and wanted one, has now been deemed by survey of experts to be, let me tell you, the vessel is presently unserviceable due to a multitude of defects resulting from a major equipment failure. All the systems are defective because they were never meant to be what they thought it was going to be, which is our offshore patrol vessel. Shore power system gone, main diesel general gone, steering system gone, corroded suction piping of auxiliary machinery gone, radar gone, ship tender gone, heating ventilation gone, air condition gone, hull and deck equipment gone. Who want to go to sea in that? As a result of which, Madam Speaker, I expect that very soon the Cabinet will authorize the disposing of that, because it's down there banging against in bad weather, it's threatening to destroy the pier. So we have to sell that as scrap. Madam Speaker, finally I want to say that we're not only concerned about the equipment, we are concerned about the personnel. Because the Cabinet recently took a decision to authorize the CD to change the law actually, to allow the pension regulations amendment to come into force, so that the CDS can do certain things for compassionate treatment of members of the Defence Force, which is those persons who are required to have 20 years before they get a pension. Very frequently you have persons with 19 years and some days, or 18 and a half years and so on, and they have to leave at the age of 45 without a pension. I understand now, hearing from my friends the other side, that they will increase the pension, the service age to age 65. But we are saying that's not what you need to do. We've done what had to be done. We've authorized the CDS to give the required number of days of service so as to let such persons qualify at the 20-year mark so they can leave the Defence Force with a pension. Madam Speaker, those are the kinds of things that we have done. But I have a whole lot more to say, but I don't have a lot more time in here. But I'm just saying to you, I've heard my colleague from Mayara speak about his swan song. I am now in my 10th year as Prime Minister. I too may be a swan. But ladies and gentlemen, colleagues in this House, as long as I could leave here, having done the best for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, it doesn't matter when I leave, because I will leave with my head held high. And I hope that when I leave here, I could be proud to say that I served with certain people. And I hope that I don't have to say, if you want to find them, you have to look where the average citizen doesn't live. Madam Speaker, it has been a pleasure working with you as Parliamentary Speaker. I don't know how much longer I will have in this Parliament, but I've done my duty, and I've kept the course. I've run the race, and I look forward, not for a pot of gold, but for my family at the end of this rainbow. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
One note.